Hello, my name is Chantel Edwards, and I picked Mexico for my cultural presentation about death and attitudes about death and traditions. And I have two different sources that I feel give an all-around view of this topic. One is Fraser, and it's a website that I found that talks about the ceremonies for the funerals and different traditions in that sense. And the article is written by Samantha Watson. And she starts off by saying that 82% of the population in 2010 was Catholic in their faith. And the Catholic faith has different traditions and views on the funeral arrangements and ceremony type things with death. So once someone dies, cremation is not encouraged. So that's burning of the body and collecting the ashes, and so also scattering ashes or keeping them in an urn is against the Catholic faith. And if cremation is picked, then the ashes must be buried according to the Catholic faith. And it is uncommon for the family to immediately take the deceased to the funeral home or a church. So they spend up to 48 hours with the dead in the home. And this is when friends and family come and visit. They bring food and money to the family of the deceased. And the deceased person is either laid in a coffin in the home, or has a simple white sheet or a sheet in general draped over them. So people are usually buried with clothes and favorite possessions that they had during their time on Earth. So they are thought to use these items in the afterlife, and that is why they were buried with them, so they can continue using them. And Veladios, I believe is how you pronounce that, is another word for awake. So a wake is held, and the deceased person, is placed in a glass coffin or with a translucent shroud draped over them. And people burn candles at each corner of the coffin. And any stubs that are left over from the wake of the candles are kept and thought to bring good luck for the family. And novenas, I think is how you pronounce that, are prayers and recitings, and or masses that close family members perform for 9 days after the dead person is laid to rest. So after the dead person is buried, or and this is meant to comfort the grieving, and sometimes it gives protection to the deceased. Also, Day of the Dead, which is one of the more popular traditions that Mexicans are known to do. Is also called Dia de los Muertos. And it's from October 31st to November 2nd. And they celebrate this every year. And it's believed that the souls of the dead return to their families. So on October 31st, the children will make altars for the spirits of the children that are coming back to visit the families. On November 1st, the same is done for adults. And then on November 2nd, families go to cemeteries to decorate the graves of their loved ones and relatives. The dead are welcomed with their favorite foods and drinks, new toys for kids, alcohol for adults, marigolds, candles, and more. And they sometimes lay out pillows and blankets for loved ones to rest, and they make altars in their homes and in way to welcome the dead back. And it has a connection with the Catholic faith, as it is also called All Saints Day or All Souls Day. And our second source, her name is Sandra, and she's a Mexican American herself. And she talks about how the reasons why Mexicans are thought to be comfortable with the idea of death. And she says, being Mexican is the ability to sway back and forth between elation and joy in bouts of melancholy and depression. And she says this is a perfect example of their attitudes towards death. So she talks about how Day of the Dead, they have bright, vibrant colors all around with the candy, sugar skulls, and the painting of faces, and the decorations, the altars, and marigolds are placed everywhere to guide the dead. Graves are decorated, special dishes are prepared, people drink and tell humorous and endearing stories of the dead. And she says that it is only different. She says that Mexico is only different in their thoughts of death and how they try to reduce the significance of it. So whenever I'm saying the word her in this instance, I am referring to death. So she says that they dress and disguise her, joke about her, write poems and songs about her, call her endearing names, represent her in ways that make her non-threatening or even laughable. So in other words, they are humanizing her, and that protects their deepest frailties when it comes to death. So their ultimate fear of the impending death and trying to humanize it in a way that doesn't scare them. And she says on the night of Day of the Dead, they suspend the law that separates the living from the dead. So they bring offerings, they share a table with the dead, allowing the dead to have the first bite. And some people stay the night at the graves of their loved ones. And she says that all of this heavy maneuvering that they do lets them distance themselves from death throughout the whole year. So these 3 days of Day of the Dead allows them to separate themselves from the idea of death during the rest of the year. And that is her own personal feelings about death and how she believes that her country sees death. And it's only one person's point of view, and I want to point that out. And other people can have different points of view in that aspect, but that is her personal view, and I thought it was very interesting to hear how she herself feels that her country feels towards death, and it's a different way of thinking about it and how people's actions can affect their feelings towards death throughout the year, based like distancing themselves from it. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something today.